Picture this. There's a guy hiding deep inside a wine press, huddled up and trying not to make a single sound. Why is he hiding? Because he is terrified. Frantically threshing wheat in secret, constantly glancing over his shoulder, praying the Midianites won't show up to steal his harvest. But do you know what God calls this guy? He appears right there in the shadows and says, "Hey there, mighty warrior. Today, we're looking at the story of a guy who started out as the biggest coward in the country, but ended up a legendary hero. Remember what happened before? Deborah, Barak, and Jael. Through them, God saved Israel. Then there was peace for 40 years, and everyone lived comfortably, letting their guard down. But people easily forget. The more prosperous they got, the further they drifted from God, convincing themselves they didn't need Him anymore. And sure enough, the punishment came with the Midianites. Their strategy was brutally efficient. They waited patiently for harvest season, the exact moment the wheat grew tall and the grapes ripened. Boom! A massive, choking cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. Thousands of camels sweeping down like an endless swarm of locusts. They left nothing behind, taking the wheat, the goats, the cattle, and the donkeys. Everything. People were crying out in agony. We break our backs all year just for them to wipe us out in a single day. Out of pure panic, they fled to the mountains and lived in dark caves like scared rats. This went on for 7 brutal years of relentless, grinding suffering, until finally, completely broken and desperate, they couldn't take it anymore. They cried out to the heavens, "God, we were wrong. Please help us." And God heard that cry. Lekin, who did He choose to save them? A famous general? A proud warrior? Nope. He chose the most terrified guy of all. Gideon. Normally you thresh wheat out in the open where the wind blows away the chaff. But Gideon was crouched in a dark, cramped wine pit, trembling with fear. Suddenly, the angel of the Lord appears and says, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Gideon almost falls over backward. "Pardon? Me?" He looks left and right. There's nobody else. He's talking to him. With eyes wide open, he stammers, Sir, if God is with us, why is all this happening?" Then the angel drops this, "Go with the strength you have. Am I not sending you? You are going to save Israel." Gideon was completely lost. "Lord, how am I supposed to save Israel? My family is the poorest in the clan, and I'm the youngest, the absolute least of my brothers. My friends." Gideon only looked at his weaknesses and his fear. Pero God wasn't looking at the scared Gideon right then, but at what he was about to become. And He promised, "I will be with you." Even so, Gideon still doubted and asked for a sign. He prepared a young goat and unleavened bread on a rock. The angel touched the offering with his staff and whoosh! Fire shot straight out of the rock, burning everything to ashes before vanishing into thin air. Gideon went pale, thinking he was going to die. But God spoke gently. "Relax, don't be afraid." Right there, Gideon built an altar and named it Yahweh Shalom. The Lord is peace. That very night, God gave him his first dangerous mission. Tear down your dad's altar to Baal in the yard and cut down the Asherah pole right next to it. Knowing the town would want his head, he waited for nightfall. With shaking hands, he grabbed a hammer and an axe. Smash! He wrecked Baal's altar into 1,000 pieces. The next morning, total chaos in the town. Who did this? Drag Gideon out so we can execute him. Lekin, his own father stepped up and defended him. Hold on! If Baal is a real god, let him defend himself. The crowd went silent, and from that day on, they nicknamed Gideon Jerubbaal. Let Baal fight against him. But the real test was just around the corner. The Midianites and Amalekites teamed up again. Guess how many? A staggering 135,000 soldiers, an endless sea of tents. When Gideon saw that massive horde, the fear rushed right back. Is God really with me? He decided to ask for another sign with a fleece of wool. Lord, let the fleece be soaking wet with dew tomorrow, but let the ground all around it be bone dry. At dawn, he wrung out the fleece. Water poured out like a bowlful. The dirt around it was completely dry. Still, doubt is tough to shake. Gideon begged one last time. God, please don't be angry. Just one more test. Make the fleece dry and the ground wet. And the next morning, exactly that happened. Gideon dropped to his knees. His heart surrendered completely to God's infinite patience. No more turning back. It was time to blow the war trumpet. Word spread like wildfire, and 32,000 men showed up. Thinking they had a huge crowd, they felt ready for battle. But God tells Gideon, you've got way too many people. If you win with this many, Israel will brag that they saved themselves by their own strength, and I am not sharing my glory. So he orders, announce that anyone who is afraid can pack up and go home right now. 22,000 men left. Only 10,000 were left in the camp, and God says it again, still too many. He tells him, take them down to the river to drink. The vast majority dropped to their knees, shoved their faces in the water and gulped like animals. Like in a small group of 300 didn't kneel. They scooped water with their hands and lapped it up while staying on their feet, eyes wide open, scanning the horizon for enemies. And God said, keep just them. With these 300, I'm going to save you. Just picture the scene. On the other side of the valley, 135,000 enemies. On this side, 300 dudes with Gideon. It sounds like a bad joke. That night, Gideon's heart was beating a mile a minute, the nerves eating him alive. God told him with grace, go down to the enemy camp right now. I've already handed them over, but if you're still scared, sneak down with your servant and listen in on what they're saying. Gideon and his helpers slipped through the dark to the tents. They overheard an enemy soldier telling a dream to his buddy. Man, I just dreamed a round loaf of barley bread rolled into our camp, smashed into a tent and totally wiped it out. And the other responded, waking up scared to death. That's the sword of Gideon. God has handed us all over to him. When Gideon heard that, the fear vanished instantly. The enemies were already terrified of them. He raced back to his 300 men and shouted with fierce energy, let's go! The Lord has handed the camp right over to us. In place of swords and spears, he handed each man an empty clay jar, a burning torch hidden inside, and a trumpet. The soldiers looked at each other like a clay pot and a kazoo to war. Pero they trusted him and obeyed without a word. Midnight hits. The 300 men quietly surrounded the massive enemy camp in total darkness. At Gideon's signal, they blew their trumpets hard, smashed the clay jars against the ground, held up their blazing torches, and roared at the top of their lungs, for the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. Crash! The sound of hundreds of jars shattering ripped through the night. The blast of the trumpets shook the valley. Torches flared up everywhere. The Midianites woke up in absolute panicky chaos. In the pitch black, thinking an overwhelming army had hit them, panic took over completely. And the Bible puts it plainly. God caused the Midianites to turn on each other, drawing their swords and wiping each other out in the confusion. The 300 Israelites? They just stood frozen in their spots, holding torches and blowing trumpets, watching God do all the heavy lifting. Without swinging a single sword, 135,000 enemies destroyed themselves that night. The war was over. Absolute victory. The people ran to Gideon and begged, stay with us. Be our king, rule over us and our kids, you saved our lives. Pero Gideon firmly shut it down. No, I will not rule over you, and neither will my sons. The only one who rules over you is God. Yet, Gideon was still human and slipped up later on. He asked for gold from the plunder and made an ephod, which the people eventually worshipped like an idol, bringing serious trouble to his family. A small mistake with a heavy price. Gideon's story leaves us with a massive takeaway. The greatest victories don't happen because we're strong, smart, or well-equipped. Sometimes God prefers to use us when we're weak, when we're just 300. So it is crystal clear that the victory comes from Him, and the glory belongs exclusively to Him. Pero after Gideon passed away, the people quickly forgot God all over again, and from that point on, things are about to get a whole lot darker. The next story, in part 6 of Judges, Tragedy Born of Ambition, the story of Abimelech and Jephthah's bitter vow. Don't miss the next episode. See you later.